this one non-human friend, we got into the discussion of goals, and he said, excuse me, I said, he is not true. Yeah, I don't know whether it's a he or a she, so I developed a term, he, she. So he, she said, well, perhaps our goals are different. And I in turn said, well, I wouldn't think so. And he says, well, he, she says, well, what is your goal? And I, thinking to be very noble and very spiritual, I said, well, my goals are dedicated to serving humankind. That's what I want to do. And he, she said, yes, that's a very noble goal, but there are other goals. And with that, I tried to find out. He says, well, there are other goals. That was a nice bait, a lure. And that got me curious and say, well, what other goals would there be? I thought that was a very noble goal. And this great enlightenment came to me months later, years, who can tell, that there was another goal, and that goal is the one I was just perceiving, to go home. And I thought, what a wonderful idea it would be to go home. And to be the local boy who made good and goes back to his hometown with all the medals on his chest and his pockets full of gold and all these bags of tricks, and go down the main street of the town, and everybody will say, oh, here he is, our hero's back. All this, typical go home type of thing. And so I had been home twice, and had to be dragged back, kicking and screaming, as it were, from going home, because that was not what I was supposed to do. So I knew what home was and symbolized to me, and so I knew the goal was to go home. I knew what home was like, where I came from. And so my great joy was to prepare, to build, to go home. Oh, this is great, wonderful. I had a goal, and for years I had that goal of going home, gathering all this, everything I could gather that would be useful, to have fun and teach people, do all sorts of things at home. As a result, I in turn thought, well, for a long time, and this was, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, something like that, I got into the pattern of saying, well, and I asked this non-physical he-she friend, I said, and he was saying that was also a nice new goal. He always was very agreeable. That was a nice goal too. That's different from serving humankind. Go home. So I got into that, and then I asked him, because I didn't know how to do it very well. So he taught me. He says, I'll show you how you can go home for a visit. I just wanted to get a little visit, to stimulate me more, saying, oh, what a wonderful thing and way to go home. And so I wanted to get a taste of home again, and I knew what it was like. So he showed me how to do this, and I learned what I call the quick switch method, from here to there. And it sounds weird, but it's as if one were to stretch a rubber band like that over to here, and then you let go of here, and you're there. Click, like that. And I call it the quick switch method of getting somewhere. And as a result, in using this, I suddenly was home. And the story of my getting this home thing was a very, very profound change. Because I went and got home, and here were these that I remembered so beautifully, they were huge, roiling clouds. And clouds had many, many different hues, bright colors within them, shifting like rainbow colors all through them. And you could lie in the clouds and just observe this spectacle of change. And it was not all round rolling. There were cubes and everything else, all sorts of different types of symbol forms flowing round and through this. And you lie there and it's so beautiful. And then, as you were there, and I'm using time-space terms to express it because it's the only way you can do it. And as you would lie there, you would hear this tremendous music. And I interpreted it as music, but it was something else. But it was, of course, a form of vibration. But it expressed itself to me in music, beautiful, beautiful music, like a massive symphony orchestra, beautifully conducted, and over here was a magnificent choir of 1,000 human voices, and you're listening to all of this. And in this return quick visit, I lay back in the clouds and looked at these beautiful patterns and heard this exquisite music. And I perhaps might have stayed there forever, except what I had grown, and that was my left brain. Because I was lying there and I looked at something and my attention got caught. And what was it? And I looked again, perceived again, and it was right. Here was a pattern of clouds that went like this, for example, and then went on. And if you waited long enough, that same pattern of clouds came along and it went like this and went on. It was a loop. It was a continuous loop. It was nothing new in the loop. The same thing came back again and again and again. And I then listened to the music. And sure enough, here's a beautiful melody line going. And if you waited long enough, the same instrument and the same melody line would be repeated. And with that, I sat up and had a great sigh of, and because I realized that then I knew why I had left home. Because I was bored. There was nothing new to learn there. I was curious. And I was bored with watching the clouds do the same thing forever and listening to the music do the same thing forever, and I didn't want to stay there any longer. And that's why I left home. And so one final thing, I realized that I was as if I had outgrown the glove and couldn't fit there anymore. And to be sure of this, because it was an overwhelming sadness after having devoted years of anticipation to going home, I went back and down in, and here's what I call curls, which are children playing games. And I had all these new games that I had learned being human and tried to teach them. And they says, we don't want your games, we got our own games, we don't want it. I said, here's the new ones, we don't want new games. And then sadly, I left. And I realized then that I truly had outgrown home, and I couldn't go home any. It wasn't possible for me to go home. So that goal was closed off. And so I suffered quite a bit of depression from the fact that that goal was closed off to me. And to go back and serve humankind was nothing. I couldn't go back to do that. So that left a big vacuum. And I could go on and tell you much about that vacuum, but I did find another answer, obviously, after quite a long pattern.